Hey there, listeners. Welcome to the Leadership is Changing podcast. My name's Dennis Genutzos and I'm your host. I had the pleasure of interviewing Senator Marty Flynn. Wow, what a resilient figure whose journey weaves through the gritty world of professional boxing to the esteemed halls of Pennsylvania's State Senate. And had a great interview with him. And things we talked about were your word is your currency. Listening to the right people around you, and we need to adapt and adjust as leaders. So sit back and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Dennis Giannutzos.
Hey there, listeners. Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Leadership is Changing podcast. Great to have you here with us. And I've got a great guest with me today. His name is Senator Marty Flynn. Marty, a massive welcome to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Now, whereabouts in the world are you today?
I am in Oliphant, Pennsylvania,
Oh, okay.
right outside of my PA Senate district at my friend's studio. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So you have gone from being in a sporting kind of side of things, athlete, from boxing kind of things. You'll tell us more about that. Then you've gone into some business, but then into the political side of things. Tell us more about your background.
Yeah. I started boxing at like a late age. I started around 18, 19 and kind of dove into that, really set discipline goals up in my life to keep me on the straight and narrow, so to say. And it really brought everything into like super focus in my life. And it let me thrive in other assets of my life. And I put things together and put myself through college, started businesses. I had a bar at, I think I was like 28. So from when I was about 18 to about 35, I pretty much lived boxing and then got by whatever I could do to get by. And then life kind of outgrew the boxing, and I used that background to propel myself business-wise, and ended up being politically also. So that was kind of interesting the way I got into that,
Yeah. So what was the transition like for you to go from the sporting side into the politics?
It was kind of like on a bet in a way.
Oh,
It was the person that was my predecessor as I started off as a state representative. I was a state rep for 9 years before there was a special election to become the senator in this district. But I had a bar license that I needed to get renewed. And when you're dealing with the state in Pennsylvania, dealing through the red tape, it gets hard to renew it. That you put your license up on the wall at a certain date, it expires. Well, mine had expired. So I got a hold of my state representative to try and get it fast tracked to get it done, to get renewed. And my representative at the time wouldn't call me back. So I kind of put a bad taste in my mouth. And I remember having a party for him where I ate the money when he ran for election the years prior, like 3-4 years prior. So I had a bad taste in my mouth for the person. And, I started talking to my family members. I could beat that guy, My dad's like, I don't know about that. And he started asking around, and I kind of was a well-known person in the community because of sports and stuff, and being like a local club fighter, you know what I mean? You get a sense of popularity in the bars and such, and that springboarded me into the scene. I actually beat the guy by 241 votes my first time around back in 2013. So it was a pretty quick ride to the top. Usually people serve in city councils and school boards and before they get into that kind of position. But I got really lucky and had a lot of great people around me to help me up.
the importance of having people around you to support you and help you. How important is that?
Yeah. One thing I will say is the trick is not having good people around you. It's listening to the good people around. You could have some of the best people in the world around you, but if you don't listen to them, that's where the problem happens. You know what I mean? And it's like a lot of things have to line up, but at the same time, you have to surround yourself with the right people. Your employees, most importantly, have to be smarter than you, have to be better than you, and you have to jive with everybody. That's some kind of synergy is always huge in the political spectrum and in the official side of our job, because it's two worlds in PA politics that you have to keep separate. You can't mix them because you can mix them, but you can't use government resources for political reasons.
Yep.
And that's where it gets tricky and you have to watch.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got the same here as well in New Zealand. So how long's your term when you get elected? How long's that term?
My state house seats, the terms were 2 years. The Senate seat is 4 years.
Right.
In the Pennsylvania State Senate.
So how many years or how many times are you been in the...
So here's what happened. I got elected to my 5th term in the House. Okay. And then I think it was like within a year that Senate seat opened up. So I won the Senate seat in a special election. And then I ran, and another year after that, I had to run in a regular term. And I just won my first full term of 4 years. So I had like 3 elections in 18 months.
Wow.
And it was crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's great. And so with the role that you have today as a senator and you doing the boxing and the business as well, how did you actually get into leadership yourself?
I think that's kind of a hard question. Leadership itself, I think since kindergarten, I've been in, a leadership position out in the yard. You know what I mean? I tell everybody it's a schoolyard. That's all politics is. It's a popularity contest in a schoolyard. But then you have to know what you're talking about. You have to be educated. You have to know when to shut up. Like I tell people all the time, you could be the smartest person in the world in the PA legislature, and that doesn't mean anything. It's the relationships you make. It's how you help people. And most importantly, it's your word. Your word is your currency, which is huge. So, there are people that break their word, but whenever that happens, their stock within the building just plummets and, there's no level of trust or belief in them. So,
yeah,
that's one thing most importantly, I pride myself on is my word. So it might be hard to get, but if you get it, it's gold.
Yeah, sure. And, you got to be also mindful of, you're not just out there saying everything every 5 minutes as well. So I like what you said, your word is your currency. And I think for a lot of leaders as well today, and in particular here, listeners, is the fact that if leaders are going to say they're going to do something, then do it. Here's an example. When questions are asked at some presentation you might be doing and some people don't know the answer to the question, the person up front goes, okay, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll come back to you. And they don't go back to people. And it's just dumb. And so their word of them actually saying or committing to saying, I'm going to go back to people, and they don't follow up, is where they lose that trust and credibility with people.
Yeah, and also not calling people back. That's a huge thing I pride myself on. No matter who it is, I call everybody back. And if someone tells me they call my office and no one called them back, I tell them they're crazy because that's not true. It doesn't happen. We call everybody back. I call everybody back. And I move from there, but, sometimes things happen. I apologize if something got mixed up, but, I'm very hands-on. And that I think has really helped propel me in terms of public services. My constituent service, I serve 250,000 people now. The PA State House, it was 66,000. I went from 66 to 250. And I pride myself on helping my constituents basically surf and be a conduit for my constituents within the Pennsylvania government. Like, since you're from New Zealand, I'll put in perspective, like Pennsylvania, we have like almost 13 million people in Pennsylvania. And we have like the 20th largest economy in the world. That's including countries. So, our budget is like $42 billion. And that's without the federal component of what comes into our state. That's just the state component. So probably like close to $80 billion with federal funds a year. So, it's a pretty large undertaking.
Yeah, especially for a country like New Zealand, where we have 5 million people as population. Yeah. So we're just a suburb within Pennsylvania, right? Probably. So
there's around 3 million. So
yeah, and I think that in our government, where we have the government sits, we have 120, I think it is 126 members of parliament now, right? We have a prime minister, and then we have ministers of the crown, as they call it, who sit in and have different sort of areas. So you might have, like in the US, overall, you may have a Home Secretary, no, not Home Secretary. So you
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State, good example, where we might actually have the Minister of Internal Affairs type scenario, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Or the Minister of External Affairs or, Foreign Affairs and things like that. So that'll be similar to people who, I think in the US, where they travel the world and they're building the relationships and all that. A big thing that you've been sharing already so far is you're not going to go anywhere, whether it be politics, leadership, and things like that, without building relationships with people. And I think
Yeah.
that's a big thing. And I think one thing is that a lot of people who get into politics, they're around people and that, but when they get there, sometimes they forget the people or they forget the
Yep.
people who got there. And by you just sharing the fact that you call back people and going back to them, it's really quite key, right?
Look at politics. Like a lot of people and people that are like that always look at stepping stones. Like, oh, what's your next move? When are you moving up? Like, I don't look at it like that. Like, I'm happy where I am. I like serving. If by chance something opened up where it seemed like where I could have a better platform to help people, yeah, I would take a shot at it. If there were people, as you know, in the United States, like politics is a huge money game. You know what I mean? It's like my special election, it was a 7-week cycle. There was $1.2 million spent in 7 weeks against me. You know, I'm a Democrat. I raised like 900,000. Republicans spent like $1.4 million against me in 7 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's a whole different animal
Yeah.
over here in that sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me, from the boxing side, the sporting side, through to what you're doing in politics today, what are you bringing from that side of the boxing into the politics? And I don't mean you using the gloves or the fists, but there must be
The
some.
best part, underestimate it. Underestimate it.
Yeah, go on.
Dumb boxer. He's a dumb boxer. Yeah, I'm dumb. Yeah. I love that, you know.
So people
I-
say that?
Oh my God, they think, oh, Jerem, I'm not a person above the people. I'm a man of the people.
Yes.
So like, I don't try to pretend that try to speak a certain way or be that refined person. I represent the people of my district, what they're like, my accent, you know what I mean? I have like an accent from where I'm from. I'm proud of that, you know, and I understand people. I understand how people interact with each other. I think that's my greatest strength, you know, is reading people's body language, what they're saying without saying it. And I just love to be underestimated in this game. It just moves you so much far ahead of everyone else.
Yep. Cool. Very good. And what else have you used as from the boxing or the sporting side of things to help you achieve what you've done in the politics side?
Adapt and adjust is the 2 A's, adapt and adjust. Anything I do in life, you start off with your preconceived notions and your perspective of the way you think, your perception of the way the world works. If it works, good. But what part of it doesn't work? Adapt, adjust, and keep going until you get to the goal and just grind it down, old school. And like when I first ran, I'm like, what are the people that were helping me that were like seasoned political dogs that were like, well, you have to knock on all these doors, go to all the people's doors and ask them for your vote. I'm like, I don't have to fight them. This is easy. Just knock and ask for a vote. No problem. Tell them what I'm about. This is easy. And I just did it every day, you know, from 10 o'clock till dark at, like 6 o'clock, knock doors, and it worked. It really did.
How many soles on shoes did you wear out?
3 pairs, actually. And got bit by a dog once. He just got my coat, so I got lucky.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Excellent.
the lady, I'm like, this is going to cost you. She's like, what? Your whole family has to vote for me. So,
Yeah, there you go. Dog bites me,
yeah, it was-
you're all voting for me. Yeah. Yeah, very good. Hey, this person could be alive from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
politically, I loved both Roosevelts, you know. They both rose to the challenge, I think, you know, in terms of, when America needed to move to a more social twist, with Social Security and stuff. And then with the other Roosevelt with the World War II, stepping to the plate, Perception was he was weak, he had polio, but he was the furthest thing from weak in reality. And he really showed up for the American people in times of crisis, with Pearl Harbor and everything. It was, well, as you know.
Yeah, sure. If you were to sit on a park bench with one of them, you choose which one. Would there be one question you would love to ask them? If you're sitting there having a coffee together.
Teddy probably. I'd like to pick his brain about the supposed altercations he was in. But if it was any kind of leader, it would probably General Patton. It'd be who I'd love to sit down on a park bench with to pick his brain.
Oh, yeah? What would you ask him?
I was just so fascinated with General Patton and how he wanted to go after World War II was over, just keep going and go after the Russians. That's he wanted to just keep going, but he met an early demise in life. I would probably ask him why. What was his thoughts on that? You know?
Why he stopped or why he wanted
Yeah,
to?
why he did stop or why he wanted to, what his real reasoning was. He hated the Russians, we know that. Why?
It would be really awesome to be able to go back and actually ask some of these, or interview some of these leaders from the past.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Hey, look, the show's called Leadership is Changing. When I mentioned that title or that statement, what does it mean for Marty?
I think in the United States, when I was elected in 2013, I would never in a million years think 10 years later that our democracy would be on the ropes the way it is in the United States and even in Pennsylvania as a bellwether state here, that our government, our democratic republic is operating on life support. And, just the big money, the corporate money, the lack of bipartisanship that actually exists, the results of the 2% of things we disagree on instead of the 98% of the things we agree on are being pushed to the forefront and controlling our political narrative. That it's disheartening and scary.
Yeah, so how people focus on, I suppose it's a bit like also some people focus on a negative point rather than all that other positive stuff that's happened. And if they focus on the 2%, where's that been driven? Where people focus on that 2%?
I just think it's the other side. I'm a Democrat, so the other side to me, who controlled the PA legislature for the last 40 years, and even on a national tint, it always seems like it's serving corporate interest more so than anything and trying to take people's power away with their vote and trying to make it harder for them to vote and, cutting this district this way and that district that way. And, especially with the redistricting, I think it was about 15 years ago in the United States where the Republicans took like 1,200 seats nationally in the state legislatures. They basically controlled all the legislatures throughout the United States. And I think a lot of that is due to nonprofit status, where conservatives were using nonprofits to control elections, where Democrats use nonprofits to help people. These guys were figuring out how to control votes in certain areas through hot button issues that would get people to vote more to the right. And it just really was alarming when I started educating myself on what was going on. And in Pennsylvania, we kind of clawed some things back in Supreme Court races where we took control of the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania, and we have a Democratic House now because of that. Our Senate is still Republican, and our governor is Democrat. So there's a little bit of my party's platform being put through, but you still need the Senate to get things done. So you would think there would be more of a bipartisan atmosphere, but, it's more same old,
Yeah.
So that gets hard.
It's actually fascinating watching it from the other side of the world, right? Watching
Yeah.
politics in the US. Actually, politics anywhere. A lot of people don't like politics. And it's not that I like watching it for the politics side of things. It's about leadership. It's about how I actually sit there and watch people. I used to sit there watching Barack Obama, the way he would stand, he would speak, how he would hold himself. And then I would look at Trump, how he would do it. And then I would look at Biden, how he does it, and, and other leaders as well. And it's really quite interesting to see how they all come across to people. They all have millions of people following them. They all have millions of people who are saying, that's our leader. But it's really quite interesting how people react to things. What I actually noticed is, though, here you are, and you've got two-party system there in the US. We here in this country, we tend to have two major parties, but then there's a whole lot of smaller parties. And we've got a political system called MMP, where we used to have before called first past the post. So in other words, if you won 50% of the vote over the country, you're it. You won. You're the government. Where now it's a certain percentage, and if you get 5% of the vote, you actually get some seats in the government. And anything below that, you don't. And then the major ones tend to get a whole lot. So they might get 40% of the vote, which means that gives them 45 seats in government of the 120 something, whatever. So it's really quite interesting how it all works, but I love watching in the US and how it all unfolds, how you choose the candidates, how you then choose that person to run for that party on, for both sides, and then how it all unfolds. It's
I
amazing.
think a lot of it is so manufactured now that people aren't themselves, and
Right.
people see that now, and I think read that now.
Mm.
And I think that's part of what sold Trump so much. Not that he was a good person. Like what I think of him doesn't matter, but he was him. You know what I mean? He was very authentic to who he was and didn't care. I think the people of the United States, the people of Pennsylvania are starved for some reality, some real people in government. And I keep being the same way that got me here. So I get yelled at a lot for that by stakeholders sometimes, but I don't think I would trade it for anything, to be honest with you.
No, and I think that's what we sort of cotton on before, we were talking about before, is the fact that if you remember the people that got you there, but also because you're right, a lot of people, there's that thing out there, that BS radar, that they'll actually pick it up real quick. And people are seeing leaders who are trying to be something they're not. And people going like, no, this is not true. This is very plasticky. This is not what we're wanting. Yeah.
And I'm so blunt that it's so hard for me to be fake. It's so obvious, you know? So I'm glad I have that characteristic and trait.
So, I mean, in other words, do you call it a spade?
My grandmother would say, I don't call it a spade. I call it a number 120 shovel. But I do.
You're really specific. Yeah. Okay. I mean, or are they asking you to be with an iron fist, but with a velvet glove? Is that what they're asking you to do?
Yes. And that's how I operate. You know, that's one good thing about coming from the ring or being an ex-boxer, that the people with these ivory pasts are so, you know, above everything. And I just bring the reality of the working class into my caucus every day and smile while I'm doing it, you know?
Yep.
Like right now in the Democratic caucuses across the United States, you know, like people look at white middle-aged males like myself as like the enemy when, you know, we're still 40% of the population in the United States. It's crazy, you know? And I'm totally the opposite, you know, just because I work on the other side of the aisle and I'm a more conservative Democrat, so to say. But, you know, 9 out of 10 things I am on the same platform with all Democrats. But, you know, certain parts of my own party and certain parts of the other party, you know, I have a problem with, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think there's anything in government or in politics that when you're not going to agree 100% everything, even your own party, you're not going to agree with them 100%. There are things that even the ones that I look at and I go, oh, that's dumb. But, you know, all the rest of the stuff, I think they're great. So, yeah, it's interesting how it all is.
But one thing I think the other party differs from Democrats. Democrats are always about trying to do the right thing and help people, and Republicans are always about winning. And when it comes down to it, it's a numbers game. And that's the most important thing out of anything, is to have more numbers than the other side, because you can't change policy no matter who you are if you don't have the majority, if you can't count to a higher number. And members of my party have a hard time understanding that fact, and when it's the most important part of the game.
Marty, life seems to be getting faster for us. You know, technology's driving it, business, social data, whole lot of stuff. One thing I think some leaders need to be, and maybe you might want to talk a little bit more about that, because I think from the boxing side into the politics is one thing about resiliency and being able to do that as well, and having that determination and having a spirit of wanting to get things done. What are leaders needing to do to be successful in that fast-paced changing world?
Well, I think one of the golden rules of being in this is you can't know everything about every issue. And if you did, you'd be on so far on the spectrum, you wouldn't be able to talk to anybody else because, you know, so you need to know what you don't know and you need to disseminate the information. But technology is evolving so fast right now with AI that, you know, our civilization can't keep up with it. It's not wired to keep up with it. And the fact is, we as a species don't know what we don't know. And, you know, Facebook a couple years back had those two. I think I read about this today. Again, they had two programs that were talking to each other behind Facebook's back. It was like AI. And there were two platforms within Facebook that were communicating to each other without Facebook's knowledge. The AI was talking to each other. So like, there's so many scary things that are happening right now that it's just so hard to absorb. We're not wound to do that. So even our children, you know, with the phones, with the not being out in society like we were. I'm a Generation X kid, the last of the kids to play outside and, you know, be home at dark on their bikes, you know. But it's just a totally different life cycle for these kids, millennials, and now the younger generation, that it's a foreign world. And I don't know if we're evolved as a species enough to be able to handle what's, you know, in the future in the next 10 years.
There's that ventriloquist, I think that you call it, who's in the US. Is it Jeff Dunham? I think his name is. And he has Walter, the old guy. He has, and I love it because he says, "So when you were growing up, Walter, what was one of your favorite toys?" Dirt, he said. And I love it because, that's, as you said, we were kids out there who were playing to late at night and getting told, "You kids, get inside. No, get inside now." And so it was really quite cool. But interesting stuff, things that you were sharing there. Tell me something. You may know the answer to this. Employees, because we're talking about a lot of leadership and things like that, but we're talking about employees. And I'm sure that you're meeting a lot of people who are employees. Are their expectations of leaders changed?
I would say probably not. I'd probably say not because it's still the same. You employ them, so they expect from you some kind of respect. At the same time, you to lead them in the proper direction in their work space. But do I think treatment wise, not since labor laws hit in the United States and around the world, which actually my county is basically the decision for Clarence Darrow, John Mitchell, the 8-hour work week, the weekends, that was all fought for in my county courthouse in Lackawanna County in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
That decision came down where those rights were for coal miners back in the early 1900s. So it was a pretty big decision back in the day for the United States.
Let me ask that question again for you, though, as a politician. People who are the voters, are they expecting different things from politicians today? Has that changed?
I don't know because I wasn't there in a sense and read enough about actually the psyche of the voter and the politicians of that time. I would say during war times, definitely. During economic crisis times, definitely. During coming out of slavery, Jim Crow in the United States, definitely. But now we're kind of in this like warm water in the United States where economically we're okay, but we're not good, but we're not thriving. The middle class is shrinking. Things are getting harder, but it's like a slow roast, a slow water, just getting warmer and warmer, harder and harder. People are begging for the leadership, I would say, in some sense, but not. I wouldn't feel like they're delivered on that. I don't think Joe Biden is given this. Everybody knows, he's done a good job, but he's having a hard time selling his good job that he's done as a president. And, with everything going up, inflation, the United States inflation rate was, I think, a third of what the rest of the world has faced through COVID. But, you ask the average person in the United States, they really don't care or know that. So, these kind of things, people are feeling it in the wallet, purchasing power, interest rates. People are coming with college degrees out of college that, have jobs making less money than people went to trade schools for. So, it's an upside down world right now. And I don't think AI is helping those things either. So to what degree is corporate America snatching that all up too and exacerbating that? We don't know. At least the common folk don't.
Right. Yeah, good. Yeah, good point. Okay. Where do you see leadership being in 5 years?
I think the loop that we're all stuck in, this AI loop, it's crazy. It has to change at some point in 5 years just because technology is evolving so fast that, I think natural human leadership its value is going to go up and up and up. And I think we're going to need it more than ever in the next 5 years. I will say that, but it has to evolve with this technology the way it's going. It's insane.
Brilliant.
Just 10 years ago, you know what I mean? If you look at your phone compared to 10 years ago, it's crazy.
Yeah. Our life has changed big time with that smartphone, right? I mean, it's just has changed our lives so much, just that one little
And like,
phone.
I remember like AI, I got the chat GPT like last year and I'd ask it, oh, what stocks are good this week? And all of a sudden it would tell me, and then like 6 months later, oh, we don't answer financial questions on AI. So I'm like, okay, so who's getting this information now? It's not the common people, it's them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's all flowing. It's all flowing uphill, not downhill.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing in civilization, not even the United States, in all civilizations, when you keep squeezing that middle over and over again, you squeeze it and squeeze it and squeeze it. At some point, they show up with pitchforks and they want their piece of the pie. And at some point, that's gonna happen in civilization, not even this society, all over the world. That there's going to be a restructuring of the caste system we have in the world. because, corporate interests throughout the world are not trickling down to the average people, especially in the United States.
Well, I think we're seeing some of it happening, I think probably in Europe as well with some of the farmers. I mean, I don't know whether you call them the middle class or whatever, but I mean, for a lot of them, they're going out there with their pitchforks and they're going out there with their tractors and they're going out there and protesting quite a lot because they are being affected as well. But they're also seeing the country being affected. They're seeing other areas too. Yeah, and I'm actually quite interested to see how it all works and how every country works differently too. I'll give you an example. When things were like lockdowns and things like that, people weren't happy that lockdowns were happening. Yes, we understood there was a virus, but then a lot of government interference, a lot of people trying to being told to stay home, told what to do, businesses going under, people going bankrupt, people committing suicide. It was just a lot on. But in some countries, you saw the opposition go and march in the streets with people, and in other countries, you saw the opposition do nothing. And you're like, where's the leadership there? What's going on? And it's just fascinating to sit back and watch how it all works, but also what are people doing in the streets? Where are they with the people? And where's the voice? Is the voice being heard or not?
Yeah, that was very interesting to see because I was pretty middle of the road there. I wouldn't want to see somebody die because of a virus going out of control. So I was pretty much staying on the side of keeping it under control, keeping everybody separated. But towards the end, it got a little stretched out once we figured out what was going on. And once, but millions of lives were actually saved. So I'm happy with that. But, hindsight, you can always say what you did wrong. But, I think we're better off for taking such a cautious angle on everything. I would definitely say so.
Yeah.
But are there things we could have done right? Yes, definitely. I think a stronger leadership in certain instances would have also helped by recognizing it a little earlier in the United States and being a little more hands-on.
But I think Trump was the president then, right?
Someone was. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Very good. Well, Marty, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. If our listeners are wanting to get hold of you, where should they go?
Oh, yeah. Marty at the Marty Flynn on Instagram. And then send Marty Flynn will come up. And you'll have my links on the page also. So
yeah. Excellent. We'll put those in the show notes, listeners, so you can refer to Marty's social media handles and things like that. But Marty, once again, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Yes, it was great. Thank you.
Well, there you go, listeners. It's about listening to the right people around you. And the other thing is that your word is your currency. Hey, thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.